Kohanim heim bechinath Torah. So the Kohanim, that's us, the metaphor. Remember in the way that Rabbi Nachman opened this Torah back, I don't know, probably close to a year ago, when we first read that. And more like Kohanim, and the pasuk continues, Bnei Aharon. We said back there that it seems that there's sort of these two attributes we have of being Bnei Aharon and also of being Kohanim. And Bnei Aharon, well, that's who we are by our nature. It represents, we're not all from the same tribe as Aharon, but we are we're supposed to be like the Kohanim of the world. This comes up in many explanations of what Kohanim refers to, and it'll even come up probably in some of the commentaries we're going to look at today and what's relevant. So in the grand metaphor of Torah Beit and Likutei Moharan, all Jews are the Kohanim and the Bnei Aharon. And as Bnei Aharon, we have a certain nature, and we're going to be prayerful folk, and that is according to our nature, and we have laws about that, but there is, of course, something beyond the letter of the law, and that's what a great many books are concerned with, including what Rabbi Nachman is saying here, that we have something more than being Bnei Aharon, that we have a way that we are. That's very nice, but what it qualifies us to be is Kohanim. Now we have the job description, and that's the sort of prayer that we've talked about for the past however many classes. So Rabbi Nachman now says in some of the concluding words in the re-explanation of the original pasuk that Kohanim is correspondent to the Torah, to say that we are sort of the Torah, or walking Torah. And that's not a far-fetched concept. A few examples of this concept. The Gedalia Aharon Koenig, who founded the Tsfat Breslov community, it is said about him that everything he did, the way he sips his tea, the way he wears his hat, the way he prays and learns, and other things too, is based on some concept from Likutei Moharan. It's interesting, within the Breslov thinking about garments, I was speaking with a Hasidic rabbi from another lineage, and we were talking about garments, and there's not exactly a standard garment in Breslov. This is associated with Breslov, but we didn't come up with it. It's actually called the Yerushalmi Kippah, and a lot of us like it because it represents a concept. So what we were talking about garments, and he said, well, there's two basic functions to a garment. He's older than me, so he opens here, and he says, the one is to show this is I'm like in my uniform, and so others see what kind of chassid I am, and also so I can remind myself what kind of chassid I am. I wear this style hat and such, and so then when I see myself in the mirror looking that way, it'll encourage me to be more that way. Okay, so that's nice. Within Breslov, there's an idea that every aspect of the garment can represent some sort of a concept. For example, the kippah that has the little thingy on the top here. There's a teaching in the Likutei Moharan wherein we are supposed to go to the edge of knowledge and sort of keep hitting our head against that place. And from this impact, we will produce new personality traits and new knowledge that otherwise would not be accessible. But to do that, we're not supposed to go past that point. We're not supposed to just pretend that the information ceiling doesn't exist and go off into philosophy world. Rabbi Nachman sort of strictly forbids that, going off into philosophy world. But we should sort of stay a little bit on the edge. So what's the purpose of these things? They come from a society where people rode boats. A lot of people in Turkey wore hats that had some sort of a thing like this for sailing the Black Sea and sailing the Mediterranean Sea. And that's where a lot of Mizrahi Jews got it from. And then Breslov comes into Eretz Israel and probably had some sort of contact with Mizrahi because they were just on the other side of the Black Sea, and also picked up this style kippah. And for us, it represents a concept, but for someone who works in a boat, it's much more physical. There are lots of low crouchy places in a boat, and you don't want to hit your head in the ceiling, so you wear a little thing so you can feel before you get to the ceiling. Okay, the ceiling's right there. So it's a very simple concept. Another concept is that of the peot, and that a particular Breslov concept of the peot we're supposed to look for the Chachma in all things, and note that he doesn't say the Seichel and the Chachma, he didn't say they're the Da'ath. Da'ath being things that we basically already know and have already incorporated. And someone can gather some information to go through a period of that, and then they go about their mission in life, and they have enough information. And they just rely on their information. Now, that could be fine for some within Breslov if we say that it's a sort of his lakain. It's a sort of become old, prohibited to become old, meaning to become sort of, I'm just going to rely on the stuff that I have right now, despite the fact the world is ever changing. The Arizal says the stars have never and will never be in the same place twice with regard to our perspective on them. And if you really look at the stars right, this would be obvious to see. Maybe it looks similar to you, but the guy with the telescope says, no, it's a third of a degree off, which actually equals about 1,000,000 miles in outer space. It's how different it is. So it's not the same. And so you could simply think of the beard as being like the Da'ath, and this corresponds to the Tree of Life chart, the famous Kabbalistic Tree of Life chart. The two peot, the Chachma and Bina. And so they are a reminder to us that we are to apply our intellectual faculties to all matters, apply our intuition, apply our rational thinking, despite whether that goes with or against information we may have gathered before. And in Breslov in particular, it's actually written to be particular, to try to curl and to keep these things tidy, and to take good care of these particular faculties, for they are just as valuable as the knowledge that we've obtained and incorporated already. So again, the garment has within it Kabbalistic secrets, and secrets within our avodah. There's a particular garment. It's not a bekisha, the kaftan, the Yerushalmi kaftan. And I've got one that's not like necessarily the fanciest version. The fanciest version is rather expensive, and the reason is because it's cut of a great many pieces, and every dimension in the cut has to. It's a jacket. It's a fancy jacket. Every dimension of the cut has to be of Kabbalistic significance, sort of like every measurement in the Beit HaMikdash. And the custom is in Breslov to wear this type of garment on Shabbat, and on Yom Tov there's a variation that one wears. So it's very important that someone be in as much as they can a walking Torah. Outside of Breslov, there's a story that one of the leaders of Chabad, one of the Rebbeim of Chabad, he was asked one time why he ritually washed his hands in a certain way. There's something unusual about how he did it, and he was going to do it that way, and it didn't seem clear from what was written in widely accessible texts why exactly he was doing that. Someone asked him, and he actually said, well, the truth is I don't remember exactly the citation, but at one point when I was young, I trained my body that every part of my body would act in perfect accordance with the most refined opinion in Jewish law. And so I assure you that the way I habitually wash my hands is according to a very stringent and a very diligent approach to finding out what is the best possible way to be doing this ritual hand washing. So literally, it was in his body was the Torah. Okay, so this is not a new concept that someone's body could be the Torah. And even upon a superficial analysis of the matters we've discussed, so Torah is relevant to this. We learn Torah in order to, when we pray it in hence way, as we said many times, we go to a deep place and we bring with us the sharpness that we've gotten from learning the Torah. And from there, Ish Chacham Yad Lena, we're able to bring forth new emotions from the abyss with our sharp intellect. So Torah is involved in that. And even the idea of incorporating these things into ourselves, that in the story of Rabbi Bar Hana, he was a great rabbi. He was out at sea, and his people driving the boat decided to park the boat on an island. It was actually a fish, and so on and so forth. But we got to one point in the story where we started actually talking about the ship itself. And we talked about the ship itself. See previous classes for where that was discussed properly. When we talked about the ship itself, this was when the new emotions that we draw down from the ether, they actually incorporate into us and start to give us like sort of Hashemayim hachadashim haaretz hachadasha. They give us a new heaven, a new emotional reality, which turns into a new physical reality because we're going to do different stuff, and we're going to put ourselves in different situations with different feelings. So it could be that not only our body but our whole situation in life is a Torah. It is, except that what we've talked about in this teaching so far has involved drawing down a new emotion that will have all the effects that we just said. Well, when you tell me Torah, that makes me think information. So it doesn't exactly line up. It doesn't seem to exactly line up, saying that the Kohanim are like the Torah. So the Kohanim use the Torah. How does that work, Rabbi Nachman? So he continues with another detail that hopefully will clarify this. Mechinat Nishamoth Kanal. Kanal, as we said before. When he said Kohanim Mehem Bechinat Torah, he did not say, like we said before. When he added the detail, they correspond to souls, Nishamoth. That's where he says, like we said before. So where did we talk about? First of all, it doesn't really seem to help much. I'm just as confused now. You told me that I thought I was drawing emotions, but now you're telling me that I'm made out of Torah, and that's called a soul. Okay, but he added this detail canal to it. So where did we see this before? It should be right around the same page. Here it is. Well, actually, in this particular edition, it happens to be right at the very top of the previous page. Mechinat Nishamoth. Hold on. Here it is. Hayinu HaTorah Shehu Eish Umayim. That the Torah comprises many things. Eish and Mayim, water and fire, opposite things. If you can fit opposite things, surely you can fit many other sorts of things within them. The point being that it's a complicated thing. Now, we were talking before about souls in the context of that our prayers are that we want to help specific people with our prayers, and when we learn out merits on these people, we bring them into our prayers. Again, this is things we covered in depth in a previous lesson, but just to remind you what we were talking about when you brought that up in the Torah before. But one thing that arose from that is that a soul is a complex thing, and many things that are within a soul, and there's no contradiction really. And then he says, "HaTorah is Eishumayim Hainu Bechinat Hanishamoth." That corresponds to souls. So we see already. Okay, so you want to make this distinction of prayer. You want to make the distinction of emotions and teachings and things like that. Well, guess what? There's a level in Shemayim that's high enough that you can incorporate both these things. A soul can incorporate opposite things. It's non-physical, and so it doesn't have. It is connected to the physical. It is not so high a level of spirituality that it's completely not tethered or not relevant to the tetherings of physicality in any way. It corresponds to the intellect. It says in the Talmud, you can't imagine an elephant going through the head of a pin without changing their sizes. Right? There are things that are above the intellect, above the Nishama. We have other levels in Kabbalah above the Nishama. But it is relatively untethered. So what are the advantages here of that? One is the ability to contain opposites. There's two statements of Rabbi Nachman. One very famous statement, you should always be in a state of joy. Another statement that once, for an hour a day, or a set period of time a day, you should cry about your sins. Okay, so that seems like a little contradictory. Okay, so tell me most of the time I should be joyful or something like that. But how do you work this one out? And there's also, with regard to the statement about crying over your sins, he says only do that a little bit, because otherwise it'll be too exhausting on you. Okay, so that sounds reasonable, but it doesn't fix the contradiction with always being joyful. So someone wrote a letter to Rabbi Gedalia Aharon Koenig, who again founded the Tsfat Breslov community, and he responded in his letter what it means. That another thing Rabbi Nachman teaches is that the heart is able to contain multiple emotions, up to two opposite emotions, and actually it's a beneficial exercise for one's heart to be able to do that. If one can do that in their prayers, they can sort of double the potency of the prayers. If you look at many the Pesukim that we recite, many of the words of the prayer, they will very quickly switch emotions. Shomer Hashem et kol havav, et kol Rishayim yashmid. Hashem protects all those he loves and he kills the bad guys. It's a different emotion. And they're in rapid succession. Most people pray pretty fast. So you got to be pretty agile in the heart for that. And this is the case for many Pesukim, they will have nearly opposite emotions in the first and second half of the Pesuk. So again, emotional agility and really emotional ability to hold multiple emotions at once. So his answer there is that what Rabbi Nachman means is that for one period of time a day, you will both cry over your sins and simultaneously be joyful. But now remember that the soul is not completely untethered, and so he says when Rabbi Nachman says not to do it longer than that, he doesn't mean you'll be exhausted from the crying over your sins. He means you'll be exhausted from the holding these opposite emotions in your heart for an extended period of time. That it's tiring, but it can be done. And not to mention the Nishama, which is, again, a step, the heart would really correspond more to the Ruach, which is more tethered, not so much, but more tethered to physicality. And then the Nishama is less. You can imagine opposite things for a longer period of time than you could actually feel them tangibly. So at the level of the Nishama, both things can occur at once. Okay, so there is this dynamic, there is this place almost. It's almost like the place where you go. There's a certain level of emotional depth that you must reach in your prayer, wherein if you have the adequate intellectual acuity, then you will be able to draw forth brand new emotion. And I'm not saying that place it stays still. It maybe is kind of think of it like a horizon. It's the new emotions horizon. And so let's call that the Nishama. That's what Nishama means in the context of our conversation. So now, when we say that the Kohanim, they correspond to the Torah, at what point is this so? When they're the Kohanim, when they're doing their job as the Kohanim, going to this place with the keys in hand, the emotion, the intellectual acuity from the learning of difficult subjects in the Torah in a deep, studious way. And really get to the bottom of matters. Then they will reach this level called Nishama. Okay, so now, tell me more about this place. We've talked about going to this place. We've talked about not making excuses to avoid going to this place. We've talked about what we do to get what we need from this place, which is what we bring down from this place, and what we do with the next. But we never talked that much about this place in particular. So what is this place? You're telling me right at the end of the Torah, you're bringing me, again, novelty. So what is this place? Kamosh Shekathuv, Rabbi Nachman brings a pasuk that we're going to look at in a moment. In Malachi, the prophecies of Malachi. Ki siftei hohen yishmiru da'ath v'thora. It sounds like, we'll look at the pasuk actually in a second, but it sounds like he's saying, because the lips of the Kohanim, they guard the knowledge and the Torah and all that smart stuff. Well, that makes it harder, man, because Yishmeru makes it sound like they don't let it go. They guard this here so nobody else gets it or something, but that seems to be contrary to what we've discussed so far. So let's see. Let's take a look at that pasuk. And typically, Rabbi Nachman will give you a pasuk that is easy to misunderstand, and then he expects you to either have already done or to now go do your homework, look at the pasuk. And that's where you'll discover what he really means. He wants to bug you with a question, so you'll look up this detail in the pasuk. He wants you to look up the sources. Not enough just to read in Likutei Moharan, take a bumper sticker. You have to look up the sources, or ask somebody, or watch a class where somebody looks up the sources, something like that. It's an important aspect. Okay, so the pasuk says, "Ki siftei echohein yishmeru da'ath v'thora yivakashu mipihu." Already I've noticed something that bothers me. Ki siftei echohein yishmeru da'ath. Pause. That's a pasik. So that's a concept break. The melody I just did is represented by symbols that are drawn, and it means something. The reason we do those melodies when we read from the Torah is not so it sounds pretty, but they're actually punctuation. They're actually a quite sophisticated form. I dare say more so than English punctuation, of breaking up and grouping concepts. So right there, it's not Yishmeru Da'ath with Torah. That's not how it goes. He's not grouping these two together. So what Rabbi Nachman actually wrote was more like this. For the Kohanim, the lips of the Kohanim guard knowledge and Torah ... So what is Rabbi Nachman saying about Torah here? It's something more than knowledge. First of all, but still, it's an interesting thing to put a feather in our hat and to watch that detail, and maybe it'll unfold. Why did Rabbi Nachman select such an odd selection of the pasuk? Right, he selected a full phrase and then the first word of the next phrase. There's an idea in Breslov. You're supposed to remember, just connect the beginning of your prayer to the end. Remember the first word of your prayer when you get to the last word. One of my teachers in Breslov, one of the big Rabbanim here in Tsfat, Breslov, he reads quite fast, and when he reads, especially when he's reading fast, and he does this in prayer too, he finishes a phrase and reads the next word of the first phrase, and then takes a breath. I always does it. He does it that way. I think I'm sure it is with great intention, and perhaps the intention is connecting the end and the beginning in this way. But also we see in Likutei Moharan itself that Rabbi Nachman does this with verses. He takes the full phrase and then the first word of the next phrase, and it sort of has this implied ... So, okay, I've looked through the commentaries here, and I'm basically going to categorize them into two categories. There's the commentary of everybody else on the page, and I'll read a little bit of some selections that say kind of some categorically what that is, the more brief ones, because everybody basically says the same thing in more or less words, except for Ibn Azra. Ibn Azra says something different, and so we'll look at the chiluk here. So Rashi says the thing everybody else says, basically. Ki siftei chohen Alehem mutal lishmor da'ath. It is upon the Kohanim to protect wisdom. Lama. Why is that? Shahari Torah yivakshem epiu. Because people are going to ask the Kohanim, what should I do? Shekavar devar zeh musar lahem yoru mishpetech Yaakov. Because this job of giving rulings has already been issued to the Jews. You will issue forth your rulings to Yaakov, to the Jews. And there's another commentary that brings here. And it was in last week's parsha that the Kohanim do have actually a part of a job of providing rulings for ritual matters and such. So that's the simple meaning. That it just means that we're communicating laws, which seems that, again, why it says guarding is like strange with regard to that. But the Kohanim are supposed to do that. But that does not explain how the Kohanim are the Torah. They tell the Torah. It does not explain why Rabbi Nachman sort of left us hanging with this word Torah. Furthermore, one other detail it's almost as though Rashi read the Likutei Moharan, or he was aware of its heavenly existence, and he didn't. Rabbi Nachman just said it later. But Rashi knew about it. Of course, he knew about it, and that is that seemingly this level goes to Yaakov. He brings these words here. He could have just simply said that the Kohanim have a responsibility to pass, and he could have brought the pasuk that his colleague, another Rishon, Maharikra, wrote. It says that you bring your cases to the Kohanim Haluim Alshech Asher Yehi Yamim Haim, that you'll bring it to the Kohanim or the judges for to issue rulings. That's the same thing, but Rashi wrote that, and he chose this specific selection. Yoru Mishpatecha, to whom? Yaakov. So this corresponds to our job as Yaakov, Bnei Yaakov. It's just sort of what we are. Like, I mean, is it a credit that I was born Jew? I don't know. I didn't do much for that to happen. What are you going to do with it? So I can give it to you. What are you going to do with it? So that's really what we're talking about in this story. What are you going to do with it? It seems like this issue of just sort of issuing rulings is that really goes with just the sort of stam being a Jew level. And I mean, people are you better know some Torah if you're a Jew, because people are going to ask you. It's just going to go that way. So then in that case, Yishmeru Da'ath does sort of make sense, because people are going to ask you what it says in that Torah and what it means. They can look up what it says. They're going to ask you what it means. Whether genuine or not, you're going to be asked. So watch what you say. You get it right? But there is a deeper level here than simply issuing rulings. Remember, we said before that the point of the deep learning of halakha here is, in this Torah and Likutei Moharan, is not that we can issue rulings. That is important to do sometimes, but rather that we can reach this divine place and bring about this new reality, as we've said before. Access this divine place once we've gotten there. So let's now look at the only guy on the page here who says different. It's even Azra. Even Azra starts off again by commenting on the dikduk, the grammar. He comments on another one of the melodic markers, melodic indicators. It says key. So let's just pick on the first word here before we get into it. The word key. It's davek. It's written with a makaf. It has a connecting ki sifthe are connected as they're one word sort of ki sifthe. So what does he do with that? You don't really vocalize that in any way I'm aware of. There are times that you'll vocalize a makaf, but not the way it's written here. So it didn't stand out to me as much as the vocalized one that I read, right? But even Azra is going to interpret them. Ki b'hiyot HaKohen Yashar, when the Kohen is doing his job right, Yirbu HaYasharim, it will increase the number of people who are doing things in a proper way. So, that's interesting. It's like even Azra was also aware of what Rabbi Nachman would say some 600 years later, or maybe something like that. Indicating that when we bring these new emotions down in a way that it connects, this is another detail that we said before, this is going to produce really more rapidly a new reality around us, right? As other people have these new emotions too that we bring down. Okay, so that's one detail. So, and clearly from that, he's already talking about a level of sort of greater influence, and he's specifically indicating the Kohanim. And it's interesting that in Rashi's commentary, he did not actually say the word Kohen. He said Li'akov, but did not say the word Kohen. As opposed to even Azra right away, Ki b'hiyot HaKohen, giving that he's a Kohen. When he's a Kohen, he was Yashar, Yibri Yashar. Okay. Then he says, Hinei sifnei Kohen davek im asher l'ma'ala. It's not only there's a connection of people, but the lips of the Kohen, whatever that means, are connected with that which is above them. The lips are connected, right? Not the brain or something. The lips are connected with that which is above them. What are these lips? They're looking like this all the time? What is he talking about? Well, there is a point we talked about called Nishama. And I don't always do this, but I'm going to point out something. Nishamoth, the word Nishamoth, the letter Wow or letter Vav in the word is not a consonantal sound. It is to represent a vowel, and therefore it's simple enough to drop it from the alphanumeric gematria count of the word Nishamoth. Nun Shin 350, Mem 390, and then to drop the Vav, drop the Wow, and then you're left with Thou at the end, and so that is 790. Okay, Sifthe is 380, Sinthe plus Thou is 780, plus Yod is 790. Shamoth and Sifthe are gematria equivalent one to the other. So what is the lips of the Kohen? It is this divine location. Okay, and so what does it mean that the Kohen is Shomer Da'ath? That he is guarding the knowledge. The word Yishmeru, the word Shmira, Shmira does not always mean guarding, like I'm gonna have a sword and nobody can touch it. It can also just mean kind of keep your eye on this for me. It's a language of watching. There's the Kohanim at the Beit HaMikdash. They had Ashmaroth. They had guard watches, and these guys are going to fight off the bad. Maybe they call the cops or something if somebody makes trouble. But that's not the only reason. There's actually a reason that the Beit HaMikdash, there is a mitzvah that we have to always have, somebody has to be doing this, we have to have Ema. We have to be awe-stricken by the Beit HaMikdash. And there has to be somebody watching it. And so one of the opinions about the significance of the guard watch is that they're just there to literally look at the building. Somebody should be awake at this area of the building. They can see it and see how awesome it is. And then the mitzvah is being done, and that's what Shmirah is. It's just seeing it. So they're keeping an eye on it. What is the Kohen doing? He's keeping an eye always on this spot because, as we said before, the new emotion, new world horizon is possibly receding. As we discover a new certain emotion, next time we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. And so now we see what the significance of Torah is in this process. Why do the Kohanim have to be so concerned with Torah? Once I reach the place I can draw down new emotions, can't I? I did my thing, right? I got smicha. I could just yeah, but then, it's funny. Guys are like, oh, did you get smicha yet? Oh, buddy, there's about 100 smichas you can get. You get 12 smichas, then you get to be a communal rabbi, a communal rav, according to, and these are not easy tests, man. You have a smicha at the yeshiva where the rabbi asks them some questions and gives them a certificate. There's a government office you can go to and take a test where you have 6 hours and you write essays and you got to write all in Hebrew and pen. That really doozy on me when I took that test. The first one of those tests, they have all sorts of subjects you can get. Smicha is it is always receding. So also here, but that's only at the Yaakov level, right? The issuing rulings. But this whole thing of reaching this event horizon wherein we can bring down new emotions into the universe, that's also like that. And so this ever deepening learning, it always has to continue taking place to continue fulfilling the edict of this Torah in Likutei Moharan Beith. So now it makes sense. Kohanim heim b'chinat Torah. Kohanim have to be Torah. They have to be learning so much that they be the Torah in order to continually draw down new emotions, because the point is the novelty here. And so that corresponds exactly to Bechinat and Shamoth, that they are holding therefore at the level. They're always watching. They're always preoccupied a little bit with where exactly is the line here. What am I shooting for in my prayers? And it's almost as they're always concerned with this dimension, this line in the heavens, called Nishama. And now the pasuk, because we know that there is this place called Sifte Kohen. We know that there is this level, and behind which it is the secrets which will renew the world and allow the world to progress and not just go in the same circles of things that we've been doing for quite some time. Because we know that there is this location, in Torah, you have to keep working on that Torah. You want to keep drawing down those new emotions, keep making the world new, you're going to have to keep working on that Torah.